Hello, climate warriors. Welcome back to the Climate Network. Today's guest is someone I've been dying to work with for almost a decade. With a career spanning over 30 years in disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation spanning across the Indian subcontinent. Abha ma'am is currently the head of office UNDP here and works on issues ranging from waste management to impact on women to tribal development, rural infrastructure, livelihoods, coastal resilience, and much more. Welcome, ma'am. How does somebody who's a student of anthropology end up in a career with climate?
I started working after my college post-graduation in anthropology on tribals, forestry and livelihoods. But 1999 super cyclone changed the whole course of action, and I volunteered with a group of NGOs, about 190, to work for the relief and rehabilitation. And subsequently, I got an opportunity to work with UNDP as United Nations volunteer. And since then, the journey has been on a roller coaster, one disaster of the other all across India. And one of the kind, the tsunami, the 2004 tsunami also took me to the shores of Sri Lanka. To be very frank, if you really look at it from the anthropological perspective, the tribals have been a part and parcel of the whole ecosystem of the forest. They look after the forest, they take conserve forest, and they are the best regenerators of forest also. So that's also, in a way, anything what happens to the weather impacts the forest areas also. Disasters is a product, or in a way, if we say the natural disasters is a product of the weather changes. So being a part of the climate change, disaster risk reduction is something which we have been doing and I have been involved in from the day one.
Well, technically speaking, it was your volunteering that took you to the UN, right?
Yes. In a way, I had about 45 days I had already volunteered with a group of people where we worked with 190 NGOs for relief, rehabilitation, coordinating rescue, and also bringing people back to some type of normalcy. And that one page of CV which was sent may have made a difference, may not have made a difference. But during the interview, when they asked me what I am doing, and I said, I think that made them feel comfortable or say, yes, this person can be a good volunteer. This person would do it. She's not after a job as of now. She is willing to volunteer. So for me, it's very important to understand voluntary, anybody can become a volunteer. And it could be an engineering student, it could be a medical student, or it could be just somebody like me who had just done a post-graduation in anthropology. A lot of us think, the person has done just a simple master's or a simple not linked to a social work or not linked to a technical job, cannot volunteer. No. Everybody can volunteer, and volunteer for what you can do best. It can be just help somebody in identifying how to plant the tree properly. Or it could be teach somebody how to do, mathematics, or even how to cook. Because cooking is also an art. Not everybody is good cook.
Yes, I completely agree with you. I started as a volunteer, I think, when I was 14 or 15. And I wasn't planting the plant the right way. You have to dig, you have to mix the soil. And I remember somebody coming up to me and teaching me how to do it and telling me that next time koi aur karega, then you teach that person how to plant a plant. So, and I believe that I am who I am today because of the volunteering experience that I've had over the years. My career trajectory took a different head altogether after my law. Had I not understood what volunteering means, I don't think I would be where I am today.
No, I agree with you completely. I also feel that, the tragedy of 1999 and the volunteering I did, and it also helped me shape my uh, way of thinking on what is right and what is wrong, and how it should be done so that the benefit reaches the person maximum. So it's very important to volunteer, and I think every person, irrespective of the age, sex, gender identity, also should volunteer, because that actually broadens your scope. Not about only the subject we are working in, but it also brings you a huge knowledge about people to people interaction. And that's what we need. And that's what sometimes I feel that the generation next is missing out. When I started with UNDP, I joined, like I mentioned, I joined as a United Nations volunteer. So I worked in the community, with the community as well as the district administration. What was my role was more to, support the district administration in the relief rehabilitation after the aftermath of Super Cyclone 1999. With the communities, talk to them, find out what are their problems, and communicate it back to them. So we were working as a liaison person while also providing technical inputs to the district administration, supporting them in their activities, and also bringing in certain expertise from across the world. One of the biggest work of UNDP is also to do the knowledge transfer. So the whole knowledge from south or north-south, or within the South Asia, that's something which we also do. That's one of the biggest strengths of UNDP.
Thank you for summarizing using these few words as to what UNDP does. Most people believe that UNDP is all about money, giving funds, etc. But what they don't realize, or most people don't realize, is it's all about knowledge transfer. It's all about hand holding. It's about governance. So, thank you for just summarizing it all. You mentioned working with communities. Can you tell us about that experience?
Community level, now if I look back on the disaster management itself, we were the partners with the government when we started doing community-based disaster preparedness. We were the ones who also supported in developing the policies and the acts, contributing to those things based on the evidences from the country and outside the country. We also supported them in the capacity building activities, maybe material development, review of material, actually going and training people. Now, what we are doing also is working with the government to have resilient infrastructure. So we have this whole, called the CDRI, that is Coalition for Disaster Risk Infrastructure. So we are working in that also. So disaster management is just one example. So if I take it, we can also in the climate change scenario, because we are also talking about climate change scenario. The whole, we will have the NDCs are there, National Determined Goals, which are there, contribution to the whole world. So we are working with that. We are working with the central government. We are working with the biodiversity boards. We are also working with the Niti Aayog to identify where we need more work. We are working with the Green Climate Fund, where we work on water conservation or coastal resilience. In the similar way, we are also working on the biodiversity in the saving the snow leopards.
And one of the greatest priorities that UNDP and UN has right now is climate.
UNDP is the integrator for the
UNDP
whole
has been doing at a
climate
national level, at a South Asian
SDG
level?
agenda, which
What are the
basically means
interventions
that,
that you're looking at?
whatever actions is being taken by different agencies, we aggregate it to identify that which country is going going to achieve the 2030 agenda, or where we are falling short. Now, in India, specifically on climate change, there are some agencies, most of the agency work given within their mandate to work on climate change. UNDP specifically works, one is on the solarization bit of it. That's the renewable energy. And India, if you have read through the newspapers and other thing, we are doing quite fairly well. That's one thing. The second thing which we are doing is we are working with a lot of state governments, specifically on the coastal resilience, which basically means that you are working, on the coast, the mangroves, replantations, seagrasses, sand dunes, reviving the livelihood options of those areas, and also seeing that the developmental activity which happens there is done in a way it does not disturb the ecosystem, which basically means you're working on an ecosystem based resilience project. The third thing which we are also doing is looking at the circularity of the whole economy, which is recycling, reusing, refurbishing, and of the plastic waste or the textile waste or the electronic waste. So waste management circularity is also something which UNDP is working on. Biodiversity conservation is the fourth thing which we are also working with. It's I still remember my first professor when I started working with him on a project called Man and Forest, which talked about tribals' relationship with forest. Said the debate is sometimes between I want to conserve the tiger or do I want to conserve the bees? There are proponents which says that if you conserve the tiger, the bee is saved in itself. But there are the other also who says if I save the bee, the tiger will be saved. Now, I sometimes look at it as the bee as the community and tiger as the national level initiatives.
Nice.
So
Nice.
So we have to work together. That's it. And so there are so many small, and then we are doing something on just transition, where we are working in the closed mine areas, trying to reclaim the land which has been lost because of mining, or working with the community to see what type of different skill sets would be required if we close down the mines also. So, there are so many things which is happening and which the government of India, UNDP and other agencies are working on.
I'm curious to know what are the legislations, what are the acts that UNDP has helped the central government or the state government bring into force?
There's no act per se. There's a Government of India Act, which is National Disaster Management, the Disaster Management Act 2005. Of course, we contributed to that. We were part and parcel of that also, those discussions and supporting them, looking at various international acts which can suit us. So those are things which we do as a part of our advocacy. It's actually called the Disaster Management Act 2005. India started, working towards it in 1993 with the support of UNDP. And the policymakers went across to all over the world to actually understand who is doing what in disaster management. And that's where, it's only after, 3 consecutive disaster of 1999 super cyclone, the Gujarat earthquake of 2001, and the tsunami of 2004, after which the Disaster Management Act came in being. Before the Disaster Management Act, the Odisha state government and the Gujarat state government already had a state disaster management authority in itself. Along with that also, these states also had something, the policies were there. The disaster management policy of the country came in 2009. they also had a lot of resilience building within these state governments of the state government of Orissa and the Gujarat. Tamil Nadu did a lot of good work also specifically in strengthening their systems after the tsunami. And the tsunami preparedness activity is one of the best in this world itself. We have the INCOIS supporting that tsunami activity. I would also like to mention something about, the Kerala floods, which it happened in 2018. What did Kerala floods actually teach us? That sometimes we forget in the normal times what can happen in the disaster time. Because there was no big event in Kerala, the dams, the water bodies were not taken care of. So when the rains and the water in these dams, the rains were continuous and the water was accumulating in the dams, we were not able to open up some of the gates, which led to more flooding. These are lessons learned, and the government of India is now having actually a dam safety initiative also.
Was it because the doors were jammed? There was rust? Was there silting? Is it because of...
There were multiple of reasons, It could be some places it was not opening because of rusting. It could be also because of silting. But each dam has its own problems. So you really have to look at the reports of the government to understand what happened in each of the area. So I'll tell you one story. After the super cyclone, we had a project called shelter management. Now, in the shelter management, we introduced a lot of alternative construction practices, which means that you didn't have the normal English bond construction. We had rat trap bonds.
What is that?
Yes. That's what very interesting. When we started going to the community, they said, rat trap bond, mussa posi jivota bhitere. Because it was like a box-like structures. It didn't have any holes. Nothing was there. But it was the bricks were placed in a box-like structure over each another. And it had a little bit of hollow in between the blocks, which was not filled with cement. But when you look at the whole structure, it was absolutely as strong as the English bond. And also, interestingly, it would use at least 10 to 15% less bricks and cement mortar. So in one of the Baleshwar districts, Baleshwar blocks, where we were constructing this, there was a major discussion amongst the people and saying, the rats will enter it and it is very weak. So in the night, one of the villagers actually went with the crowbar to break it.
Oh, wow.
And, in the morning when we already, second time had a meeting, this gentleman had to politely say, I tried it, but it did not break. And so that became one of the best moments in where the whole Anganwadi center was completed in about 40-45 days with the full cooperation of the people. And after the super cyclone, in 2013, when the Phylline cyclone happened, I discussed with the Panchayati Raj department, and they wanted to, did you really make these structures with the alternative technology? There were a couple of more features which I'm not talking about because it goes into a long way. So what we said, okay, let's do a quick reality check and see how much of these structures were there and if the masons were still using the same technologies. And we did a quick survey in 4-5 districts. And in Puri district, we found a mason, Prabhakar his name was. And he was still constructing in the same technology he had been taught about. He had prepared an ashram with filler slabs, which basically means the whole roof had Mangalorean tiles in between and concrete structure. And he had a 3-storied house. And he said, I have refused to build houses which did not adhere to the earthquake engineering standards and the cyclone features. So that's a big achievement for us. And keeping that in mind, the central government and the state governments actually have put in, a small guidelines that we should be, propagating cyclone and floods resilient features in our houses, in our Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana or the Biju Pakka Ghar and all those. They have done it. Of course, it's a beneficiary driven houses, and with the cost implication a little bit more. It again depends upon beneficiary, but it is there.
So basically, teaching a man how to fish instead of giving him a fish, and that worked.
Yes, it does work. And sometimes it's also, many a times it's also, we do not have the knowledge. That knowledge transfer has to happen. Many a times the knowledges are in files or in books, it's with the research agencies. It is not with the people who have to actually use them. That's so important. The capacity building, the awareness campaigns, and also hand-holding. These three things have to go if we want to have a change.
So is it correct to say that our resilience, or our infrastructure resilience to be specific, is much, much better today? In terms of resilience also, would you tell us what the different kinds of resilience are that exist today? Because back then we would only think about the people who have died, the destruction that has been done. Today we look at the governance, we look at infrastructure resilience, we look at human resilience. So could you break down what resilience is, what it means for you? Because we understand resilience to be bouncing back. What exactly is resilience, and what are the different kinds of resilience that you look at now today when you make the laws and the policies, when the government implements its projects in terms of disaster and climate?
Right. First you have to understand what resilience is. And there are a lot of stakeholders, as Jason has rightly mentioned. One of the stakeholders is the differentially abled persons. We also have transgender, we have elderly population, we have sick people, we have, if you look at the community per se, you have the urban community, you have the rural community, you have the tribal community. So resilience for all of them would be quite different. And Leah mentioned, resilience would be also socio-economic resilience. Now, what does socio-economic resilience means? Is where are you in the social structure, and what are the rights you have? What is, how are you placed in the society, and how fast you will be able to get your entitlements? So that makes a difference. The second is when we talk about the physical resilience. Physical resilience is not about just roads, bridges, or the physical infrastructure created by the government to provide the basic infrastructure. It is also about what you have. It could be a house. Now, I could have a thatched house, I could have a pakka house, and so that's also a part of it. Then we also have the environmental resilience. Now, what do we mean by environmental? Is the ecosystem, is the place where we are staying, is it safe? If I am living on a floodplain, I will be flooded. It's as simple as that. So once we have understood what is the difference between all of them, and look at it in terms of what can be done. That's what your question, what can be done. The first and foremost is we should have very good data systems, which is there to understand the socio-economic condition of our own people. The first thing. The second thing is also we need to understand what is the access to the basic services which we have. The third thing is the economic resilience of each of these communities also. Besides this, we also need to find out what are the hazards and the risk which they are potential. And it's not just risk which are existing. Potential risk is also important. Because if you really look at it, Gajpati district never had a landslide. It did not even have flooding. We saw it. We saw Koraput floodings in urban areas. So these are all related to climate changes, the weather changes, the weather or the impact of the climate change. So we really need to also understand our ecosystems and try and improve the conditions. And finally, what I also feel is that our risk taking, this risk transfer mechanisms have to be introduced. So these are a couple of things which we are doing. And now if I come back to what government is doing, the government is ensuring that the basics, shelter, water, and food availability is there for all. So that's an investment which the governments are making. Risk transfer to a certain extent on the livelihood parameters. They are taking, like Fasal Bima Yojanas, the Weavers Insurance Scheme, or the, trying to bring in the construction workers, the welfare board. So these are something, or the slum developers, the Awas Yojana, which they are having. So they are trying to uplift and bring them to a certain economic level. Resilience of infrastructures, they are trying to ensure the power sectors don't go out. So they are trying to do underground cabling or wherever it is required to take up other, your infrastructure which is being built. It takes care of the cyclonic and flood levels which they have understood, which is existing as per today's norm. Okay, you have to all, the governance system also works according to certain sectors. And there are a lot of different stakeholders. The community may be one at the ground level. But within the community also, we have a lot of social structures. In the similar way, you also have a lot of governance structures. Now, dams are also managed differently, and there are a lot of different stakeholders in that. In the similar way, the cyclone shelters and everything is mean. So we need to bring in more. There is coordination, and everybody has started working together. But in many of the disasters, we did feel the lack of coordination. And but that has improved a lot in the country. You work better. That's why the zero casualty approach of the government of Odisha has been awarded so many times. We have literally reduced from nearly 10,000 deaths to just 24 in the last big cyclone. So we are making a lot of progress, but we need to bring in more stakeholders. It could be the NGOs, the grassroots workers, the trade associations, the corporates, the academia, because they are the ones who do the research, but the research doesn't get into the practiced areas. So we need to bring in this. We need more and more platforms. We need more dialogue. We need more discussions.
I hope this discussion adds to that.
Yes, I'm sure it would, because young people need to also listen to what happened before. And once they know what happened before, their innovative minds can come up with innovative ideas which were not thought of, and which sometimes we lack also with new technologies, the technological advancement. I'm sure the young people can do a lot. And I think it is very important for the young people to also volunteer specifically, in the tech sector. Come up with new apps, come up with new ideas which would help in reducing the time which is taken to do each work during or after a disaster.
On that note, thank you so much, ma'am, for being here with us. This was a fantastic conversation, a lot of takeaways, perspective from within the UN system, perspective of governance. And I'm very, very thankful for this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.